Why, howdy folks, it's Matthew, your friendly neighborhood technician, making a video for you out of Boise, Idaho. Just giving you an update on the 1984-85 Dodge Dakota. It's got a 6-cylinder engine in it. Now this originally came to me. I found them off of Craigslist. They were just looking for somebody to pull the engine and replace some freeze plugs. I had my speculations about it because, you know, freeze plugs, they do corrode and stuff and go out, but it's not common. So, you know, made the deal and started pulling the engine. And once I got the engine pulled, during the engine pull, I found a lot of evidence that made me wonder if this engine is even any good. First of all, freeze plugs or not, coolant or not, it did start and it did run just for a little bit, but getting it started and the way it ran was horrible, let me tell you. I mean, horrible. And so, obviously, not having freeze plugs or coolant isn't going to affect that at all. So, you know, no big deal. I was instructed to go ahead and continue pulling the engine and do all that other stuff, and that's what I did. During the engine pull, I found things like broken and cracked exhaust manifolds, all kinds of horrible broken, cracked rubber, gaskets, you name it. Just everything rotten and nasty on this deal. So as I got the engine out, I finally realized one thing that I was told was that another shop had looked at it and had basically said that it doesn't have any freeze plugs in it whatsoever. And, you know, which I thought kind of interesting because as I started pulling the engine, obviously I saw that it had freeze plugs. But then ultimately I got down to the nitty gritty of the damage. And if you can see what happened to our freeze plugs have been completely eaten through and corroded, and some of them have even fused themselves to the block. So, you know, this is why we have no coolant or no oil. I mean, yeah, no coolant inside of this engine. And so there's really nothing to this. It's got bad freeze plugs. Now, the other issue with this is that inside of this engine block, is all of this junk, okay? And so we are not going to be able to get away with just replacing freeze plugs on this, all right? I guarantee you all of that you see, all of that inside of there and all through there, all that gunk, I guarantee you that that's all inside of the radiator and that's all inside of the heater core as well. And if you look at this radiator, if you ask me, all right in here, as well as the discoloration you have here and here and here, if you ask me, it looks like this radiator has blown and has been leaking. As a matter of fact, it doesn't look like anybody can tell that this radiator has been seriously leaking. So, on top of replacing freeze plugs, if that's the route that we're going to go, we're also going to have to replace a radiator and a heater core if we're going to attempt to restore this engine. Now, I suspect, because of how bad these freeze plugs are, how nasty this engine is, I suspect that honestly, we might have a cracked head, blown head gasket, something like that going on. And so before we even attempt to restore the engine block, it would make a lot of sense to just go ahead and break off the lower intake, go ahead and take the cylinder heads off and check all this to make sure it's not cracked or anything like that. And then from there, once we have all that done, then the proper way to do this is to go ahead and remove everything that you see. Cylinder heads, you know, intake, all of this, remove the oil pan, pull the pistons out of this block, pull the crankshaft out of this block, pull the camshaft out of this block, pull it all out, take this block, and before you replace the freeze plugs, degrease it and pressure wash the heck out of it. Get all of this junk that you see inside of here out of there, okay? And then once we've done all that, then it would probably be wise to go ahead and get these freeze plugs removed, these ones that have been rusted in, and more than likely tap out the surface of this, get it nice and clean again. using a drill and different types of grit of sandpaper and get you a freeze plug reinstalled back in there. Also on the back, you can see where the back freeze plug has been compromised and it's been leaking. And so, honestly, I don't think it's going to be worth the time or the money to even attempt to fix this engine. I don't think it's going to be worth the time or the money to attempt to reinstall this engine. I think if anybody was going to spend the time and the money on this at this point, it would be better just to find another engine block and put that together and then reinstall that. So there you go, folks. There's the update on the 85 Dodge Dakota with the 3.9 liter V6 engine. I really don't think I'm going to push to reinstall this engine. I personally and professionally, I think it's a lost cause. From a professional standpoint, with all aspects factored in, money, time, return on investment, opportunity cost, all that other stuff, I think the best route to go on this one is to go ahead and get another engine block and put it in there if we want a vehicle that's going to run. So, all right, everybody. Well, this is Matthew, your friendly neighborhood technicians. Please shoot me your thoughts, your opinions, questions. I do my best to get back to everybody ASAP. Thanks for watching and supporting me. I am signing off.